Anandaji. Dada, will you tell us some more of your experiences with Baba, particularly about when he was in Europe? I understand you spent a lot of time with him there.
After Baba came out of prison, I was in, August 2nd of 1978. Less than a year later, in May of 1979, Baba began his first, what we refer to as a world tour. There were two of them in that year. And the first one was to began in Europe, in Fieschi. Actually, Baba landed in Geneva and then was driven from Geneva to Fieschi. But I was currently posted in what we now call Suva sector. And as it turned out, for this world tour, Baba could not come to Suva sector. There were some legalistic problems. So something got in my head, penetrated, and I just knew I had to go to Europe, had to go to see Baba in Fieschi. And I booked my ticket for Europe. Strictly speaking, of course, Berlin sector was not my sector, but I did it anyway. And I booked a ticket from Sydney to Rome. And thinking from Rome, I'll make my way up to Switzerland. While I was on the flight itself, which went from Sydney to Melbourne to Rome, between Sydney and Melbourne, the thought came in this head that, no, maybe I should fly to Frankfurt instead of Rome. I would go then to the sectorial office and drive with them down to Geneva, where Baba's flight was to land. So I got on the plane, got off the plane in Melbourne, and went to the ticket counter in that short hour and changed my whole booking so that instead of getting off the plane in Rome, I got off in Frankfurt. And as I was getting back on the plane, I overheard some sort of officials saying we'll have to inform the police about this. I had no idea what that was about, but anyway, when I got off the plane in Frankfurt, the Frankfurt police pulled me over and put me through some questions. In those days, the Australian government wasn't very favorable toward me, and they informed me that they had received word from the Australian government that I should be arrested. And this was immigration, they picked me up as I was getting off the plane. They took me to a special office. They told me this, and they said, "What's it about? We've checked through all the Interpol lists, and we don't find you anywhere on any of these lists. So what's going on?" I said, "It may be some religious discrimination." And this was Germany back in what was the year 79. These were young people. They were very sensitive to things like religious discrimination. And they said, yeah, that makes sense. And they immediately let me in. It was like I was the first person to enter the country on that flight. And I went to the office, and Karunananda, who was the SS of Berlin sector, welcomed me with open arms, very cordially, and I joined the crew that were driving down to uh, Geneva to meet Baba. Maybe we drove, maybe we flew, I don't recall. And Baba came. We did all the usual drama. We were escorted to a very big private room, and somebody did Tandava, and not somebody, a group of people did Tandava in front of Baba. And when it was all over, then we got into a convoy of cars and drove to where Baba was going to give his first series of darshans and his first DMC at Fiesh. And in Baba's car, I was not in Baba's car, the local Bhukti Pradhan, what's his name, Bodhishwar, I think, was there, and Baba was asking him all the usual questions, like what grows here, and it was that type of discussion, but very cordial. And Bodhishwar is just a very, very simple but very devoted sort of person. He's always moving around with his hands to his chest, and like he's totally blown away. And so we got settled in at Fiesh, and the first night, Baba called just 2 persons for field walk. It wasn't really a field walk either. It was, we were standing up on a hill with Baba. Oh, it's sort of overlooking the site. And Baba greeted each of us. One was Krit Shivananda, and of course, when I say us, I was also there. So Baba had a few words with Krit Shivananda, who in those days was either the Global Federation Secretary for PU, Protestant Universal, or the Secretary General. I don't actually recall. And I don't think that either of us was called because of our postings. It was just he and I were called. And after a while, Baba finished talking with him. Baba turned to me and he said, "So you have come," in Baba's usual playful way. "So you have come." And immediately, somewhere in the back of my head, alarm bells went off. And I thought, oh, I work in Sydney sector, then now called Suva sector, and this is not my field, and maybe, maybe it's an organizational matter. I said, "Yes, Baba." I could not help myself. Baba said, "I know. I wanted you to come." And when Baba said, "I wanted you to come," like all the weight was lifted off of my mind, my head, and I knew this was going to be just pure bliss. Baba wasn't going to, prosecute me for traveling outside of my field or anything. I know I wanted you to come. And then Baba turned to Krit Shivananda and said, "You see, Baba in those days, I wasn't an Avadhuta. So Baba used my brahmachari name, Baba said, but he said, Abhidevananda also knows Prout. I didn't know what that was about precisely. I didn't know why Baba was telling that to Krichivananji, or actually, Baba didn't clarify much with that. He didn't also explain who is the other person who knows Prout. Obviously, Baba knows Prout because it's his philosophy, but he didn't say that anybody else also knows. And that was that. I think that was pretty much all that happened on that field walk. The next morning, Baba went for his first, official, the whole show with the VSS guards and the GV guards and the cars and the whole thing, the first field walk like that. And Baba again called me for field walk. And I started running down the hill. I think there were hills. Sorry, excuse me. It's the whole geographical setup there is not clear to me. It might have been flat. There's definitely a hill that you run up and down at Ananda Marga, but in Fiesh, I don't recall. What I do recall is that while I was running to Baba's house where Baba was staying, I overheard some Margis saying, Abhidevananda, why is it always him? Because that was not 2 in a row. And I was thinking, this is not my sector, and I'm taking up Baba's time. And this was my wrong type of thinking. I have to say it was not correct way of thinking. And one of the mistakes that I brood about from time to time. And that affected me when I heard them saying, why is it always him? I started to think he really shouldn't be occupying or monopolizing Baba's time. But, Baba's calling, so I'm running down the hill. And we went on our first field walk, and that was pretty ordinary field walk. And I may, because so much time has passed, I may end up conflating multiple field walks into one. But that field walk was pretty ordinary in the sense that when Baba began, and in the first few days when Baba was in Fiesh, the things he talked about and the things he said seemed rather ordinary. He would talk about the weather and what's going on, and nothing was, miraculous. So, for example, we were walking down the road on one field walk in Fiesh. And as it turned out, on all those field walks, and in general in my life, I always attached myself right next to Baba. And so we're walking down a road where cars also travel. And we could hear a car coming up behind us. And Baba immediately started drifting over to the right side of the road. Now, in India, people drive on the left side of the road. So when the car is coming behind you, it makes sense to start moving to the right-hand side, because then the cars will easily pass on the left. But in Switzerland, where people drive on the right side of the road, when you're migrating off to the right, you're actually migrating right into the path of the car. I said, no, Baba, people drive on this side, and, we have to go off to the left. And Baba said, and he came. And then a little later, again, some cars came. We positioned us in the middle of the road, and again, some cars came from behind us. And immediately, it kind of automatically, instinctively, I started to remind Baba again that we have to go to the right, but Baba got upset. Not, not terribly upset, but, even a little upset from Baba. You feel it. No need to remind me. You told me. I remember. Um, and that I don't remember if Baba expanded on that, but basically, you only had to tell Baba anything just once, and he would remember it. He would put it into practice. But there was nothing extraordinary that Baba talked about in that field walk. Not like when Baba was talking about the lost city of Atlantis, which came much later on in the series of field walks. It was a simple field walk. Then came the third field walk, but I was already working with that thought in my mind that maybe I should let the Margis of Berlin sector get more places in this field walk. And so I did something kind of peculiar. I went up a little bit into the hills and tried to hide myself so that nobody could call me for field walk. And this was definitely a mistake on my part. Uh, it wasn't the type of relationship that a devotee should have with Baba, that Baba preferred. Yeah, I was thinking of Baba as a commodity that has, whatever is valuable to everybody. Everyone should get a chance, but Baba has his own preferences that we cannot fathom. We don't understand what's in his plan. And even though he was calling me what seemed like a very disproportionate number of times, that's Baba's whim, that's his will, and I should have been more surrendered to it, even though I liked it, even though I loved it. But I was already, behaving funny. So I missed that field walk, and Brother Ravindra, in those days, he was Sudhir or Sudiptananda. He went on his first field walk with Baba. And even though I missed that field walk, I became very curious what happened. So I asked him, and his reply was, well, that field walk was a little bit boring. I remember him using the word boring because I couldn't imagine any field walk with Baba being boring. And I said, well, how was it boring? And he replied, well, Baba got out of the car and he only said two things. I said, okay, what did Baba say? He said, well, the first thing Baba said was, it's cold here. It was, we were up in the Alps. And of course, the weather was going to be a bit chilly. And I agreed. I said, okay, maybe that isn't so thrilling a comment. Maybe that is boring. And I said, what was the second thing Baba said? And Ravindra said that Baba looked around and he asked, is Abhidevananda here? I said, well, that may be boring to you, but it's definitely not boring to me. So the next morning, I didn't hide anymore. I went down to Baba's house for the next field walk. Ramananji, who was Baba's PA, said, yes, you seem to be in great demand. And thereafter, I was with Baba on almost all of the field walks. And after Baba's visit in Piesh, anytime I went with Baba on a field walk, For example, on Baba's second world tour, when he went through Thailand, Bangkok, and I was also there, Ramananji was there, but he would send me with Baba to take the field walk, and I served as Baba's PA on those field walks. Ramananji probably got what he considered to be a much needed rest. And so field walk after field walk. And I think that's pretty much the general gist of things that happened there in Europe for me. It was a great time. I managed to stay with Baba up to Timur. We went from Viesch to Wiesbaden, I think it was, or some very small city just outside of Frankfurt where Baba stayed. And then perhaps Berlin, and then back to Timur. And everywhere along the way, it was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Again, my mind was totally free. I'm not looking over my shoulder to see if the police are there to grab me and deport me, send me away. And the only thing I had in my mind is, how long can this heaven last? When we were in Wiesbaden, we were staying in a house, and I'm sorry, I don't remember whose house it was. And the darshan was just like a family meeting, a carpeted floor, a few devotees sitting around Baba on the floor. Maybe there was a fireplace. And Baba was talking with us, just like I had some meetings with Baba like that in India, different type, but this one was just very simple, very cordial, and almost like question and answer. I think on that one, Baba asked, a spiritualist is always a universalist. Why is that? A few people took tries, and finally, I raised my hands. Baba called on me, and I said, Baba, a spiritualist loves Brahma. Brahma is everywhere and everything. Brahma, Shiva, Shakti, and everything. So, therefore, the spiritualist loves Brahma. Brahma is everything. Therefore, the spiritualist loves everyone, everything. I said, yes. And then he went on, and I think he switched the word out for Parma, Purusha, or something. But he basically agreed with the argument. It's a simple transitive theory in mathematics. And that was pretty much it, except for one special trip we took. There was it was another field walk. We went to the Rhine River. And Karuna Nanji had arranged for a boat tour of the Rhine River. We got in this boat and we went down the river. And on the different sides of the river, the tour guide would point things out like a castle or something. And yeah, this was not your average trip in Australia or the US, where you can see a little nature, but you're not going to see like huge marks of civilization that stretch back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of years. But before we got started, of course, I went up close to Baba, as usual. Baba was sitting at the front of the boat, the very front, and I was sitting like just a little bit back. But, nobody in between, but that's just the way the boat was. And Nitya Satyananji, who was a great musician, was there. And I was there. This was 1979, back in the days when we didn't have iPods and things like that, but instead we had Walkmans or, portable tape recorders or something. And I'm sitting there in front of Baba, and I've got this thing up to my ear. And I'm listening to some devotional songs. Back in those days, no Prabhat Sangeet, sung by Ashrava from Australia. And Baba takes an interest. What are you listening to? I said, I'm listening to some bhajans. Baba says, can I listen? I said, sure, Baba. So I go, I take it, I put this tape recorder next to his ear. He's listening. He goes, she knows the secret of music. Sustained chords. I don't know anything. That's just what Baba said. And then we started to move. The boat started to move. And as we're moving ahead, the spray from the river started to come over the top and onto Baba. And I'm seeing that, and I'm thinking Baba's getting wet. I go and I stand in front of Baba, let me take that spray. Baba laughs and he says, no need for that. It's natural. And we took a trip like that, basically. Oh, and at some stage, Baba turned to Nitya Satyananda and asked him to write a song, compose a song in the rhythm of the Rhine River. He never did it. I know that because I ask him every time, have you yet composed that song in the rhythm of the Rhine? Okay, we made our way to Berlin. We walked alongside the Berlin Wall for some distance. Baba opined about the evils of war, darkest spot on the human conscience, how the Allies pounced on Germany like vultures and pulled the country apart. And Baba was actually very pleased with Germany because where other countries had denied him a visa, Germany welcomed him openly. He said, I am obliged to Germany. I felt the same because, like I said, they pulled me off the plane, but then let me go. And that was quite the contrary of his attitude towards England, but he wasn't very fond of England. Let's just say he had a point about England that he would not set foot there. So that was Berlin. Then we made our way back to Timor. I was supposed to go up to massage Baba that one night. Baba said, Abhidevananda, why? Why? I'm going to make him Avadhuta in a day or two. So, and then it didn't happen. That was when I was told I have to go back to my field. And that was always very painful for me, being ripped away from Baba and having to go back. So it was in that reporting session that I was told I have to go back to my field now. And that news and the purpose, the stated purpose, which meant that it's not going to succeed either. It just exploded in my mind, and the pain was intense, absolutely intense, not a dull pain. It was just, ow, I was being ripped away from Baba, and it hurt so badly. I just exploded. I screamed, no. I mean, I know it's terrible. It sounds terrible, but that's just the only word that came out of my mouth. No. And everybody looked up. What? And that was it. A whole afternoon, I was in this intense pain. I couldn't even think, much less meditate. And that night, Baba called me for field walk again. And if you know the layout of Timmern, our training center where we were, it's on the very edge of that village. You walk out the gate, out the front door, out the gate, and if you go left, you're going into the village, and if you go right, there's just a lonely road that leads out into the countryside. And on this field walk, it was just Baba and myself, and we started walking out down that lonely road. And Baba didn't say a word to me. I didn't say a word to him. And the whole time we were walking out and back, Baba was repeating my mantra inside my mind. And by the time we got back, 75% of the pain was gone. The next morning I left, flew back to my field, flew back to the Philippines to arrange for Hiran Mayananji to come to Australia, which of course he could not, and that was that. That was
Why
my
couldn't you come?
trip to Europe. Well, the Australian government just wasn't going to let any Dadas or Didis into the country at that time. Basically, it was your fault. It was Narada's fault. The Margis were very much activists, and they were struggling for Baba's release, and the Australian government had the mistaken notion that, under the impression that that Ananda Marga was responsible for the Hilton bomb. In fact, in Berlin sector, in Bangkok, on one field walk, Baba had told me about all of this. We were in the taxi together. Baba turned to me, asked why Malcolm doesn't like Ananda Marga. Back then, the prime minister was perhaps Malcolm Fraser. And I said, I don't know, Baba. I don't know. I thought a little bit more, and I said, maybe he wants to control everything, everyone, but he can't control Ananda Marga. Baba said, oh, you mean to say he's like Indira, is it? Indira Gandhi? And I said, perhaps. And Baba paused for a while, digested it, gave a little space so that he didn't sound like he was directly contradicting me. But then he said, you see, Malcolm is under the impression that due to the Hilton bomb, he lost a lot of prestige. There was a Chobram conference and whatever. And he is under the impression that Ananda Marga is responsible, and therefore he does not like Ananda Marga. So, I mean, in that atmosphere, it was just absolutely impossible to bring another worker into Australia. They imagined that we had thousands and thousands of Margis, including members of parliament and the like, and they were just very, very strict. Sorry, I didn't mean to blame you, but
That's okay.
Facts are facts, Okay. That's it.
Oh, well, thank you, Dadaji.
My pleasure. Thank you. It was an honor.
Okay.